November 2025. Our president stands at a podium and promises the public that at least 37 senators, congressmen, and business people will be in jail by Christmas.
Bago magpasko, marami dito sa napangalanan dito ay palagay ko matatapos na yung kaso nila, buo na yung kaso. Makukulong na sila. Before Christmas, makukulong na sila. Like 37 of them.
Christmas comes. Nobody. New Year comes. Still nobody. It takes until June 2026, 7 months later, for the first sitting senator to actually get arrested. 1 out of 37. And then the whole thing has turned into a circus. The senator who ran the investigation into the scandal is now himself facing plunder charges and swears it's just to knock him out before a vice presidential impeachment trial. The retired Marine who testified he hauled suitcases of cash to a politician's door has vanished. After reports, he was pressured to take it all back. The man the president paraded as the big catch, arrested in Prague, but quietly released. Last anyone heard, he's in France asking for asylum, claiming he's the real victim here. Everyone's pointing at everyone. Nobody's in jail. And the money is just gone. And in our actual neighborhoods, the flood control walls that money was supposed to build mostly don't exist. People are still dying in storms because the walls they paid for never went up. Now, I already know some of you are halfway into the comments. The second a Filipino says anything even a little critical about Filipinos, somebody shows up with a flag emoji and Pinoy pride.
The optimum pride, though.
Or, we're the most resilient people in the world. Or, if you hate it here, then leave. I know, I've said that too. So just hold that thought, because that reflex, we're gonna come back to that, okay? So here's the question, the one most of us are too tired to even ask out loud anymore. How did we get here? Where did this all begin? Because this isn't new. This is just the latest version of a pattern that's been running for so long. Most of us have stopped seeing it. To figure out how we got here, we have to go back. Way back. Before the Philippines was even called the Philippines. There's a thing about being Filipino that I don't think we ever really let ourselves sit with. You hear it all the time, either online or from older folks at family dinners. We lost our identity. We forgot who we are. Or we need to go back to our roots. And I want to ask a question I think a lot of us have been too scared to ask out loud. Did we ever actually have an identity in the first place? Because the more honestly I look at this country, the more I think the thing we keep mourning about was maybe never there to begin with. Quick history check. Before 1521, before any Spaniard set foot here, there was no Philippines. The name didn't exist. The country didn't exist. The unified Filipino people did not exist. What existed was about 7,641 islands with dozens of different groups who, in a lot of cases, didn't even know who the others were. There's Tagalogs in Luzon, Visayans in the middle, Maranao and Tausug Muslims in the south, Igorots in the highlands, each with their own language, their own gods, their own trade routes to China, India, the Arab world, the Malay archipelago. And I want to be clear because this part actually matters to me. These were not backward people. Our ancestors were Austronesian sailors who crossed open ocean centuries before Europeans figured out how to leave the sight of land. The same people reached Madagascar in the west and Easter Island in the east. We had writing. We had epics. We had a society where women could be priestesses with more authority than the chief. That's genuinely something to be proud of. But we were not one people. There was no we. There were many we's. And then in 1521, a Portuguese guy named Magellan, sailing for Spain, parked his ship in Cebu, planted a cross, claimed the whole thing for a king back in Europe, named it Las Islas Filipinas, without consulting anyone living here at all. That's the moment the Philippines got invented, by a guy who needed something to call his new acquisition. So every time someone says we lost our identity, what they really mean is somebody else wrote our first one for us. And we've been living inside their handwriting ever since. Picture our national identity like a shared notebook that got hijacked. You're trying to write your own origin story, but then three different authors show up and start scribbling over your pages in their own ink. The first author was Spain, in red ink, and they spent 333 years basically gaslighting us into a new shape. They forced us into a specific aesthetic, the Bajo de las Campañas, where you were only civilized if you could hear the church bell from your house. That's why every town here is a carbon copy, a church, a plaza, and a municipal hall. They installed a rigid operating system, and we're still running the beta version today. And the deep stuff happened in our heads. They swapped out our gods but kept the core writing. Christian wallpaper over an indigenous house, and 4 centuries later, most of us don't realize the wallpaper isn't the wall. And when we finally rose up against them in 1896, led by a working class hero, Andres Bonifacio, the wealthier faction under Emilio Aguinaldo had Bonifacio executed by his own countrymen mid revolution. Then Aguinaldo had his best general, Antonio Luna, assassinated too. We finally got our shot at the colonizers and we used it to take a swing at each other. That pattern where we turn on each other before we can turn on the system got installed in 1897, and we still haven't debugged it. That's why our senators eat each other on TV while the contractors who paid them slip quietly out of the country. That's why every scandal here ends with Filipinos blaming other Filipinos for the thing the system did to all of us. Second author, America, in blue ink. They're only here for 48 years, but they made it count. They bought us from Spain in 1898 for 20 million bucks, like real estate. They fought a war to pacify us, kill up to 1 million Filipinos, and then scrub that entire chapter from our history books. We grew up learning about benevolent assimilation instead of body counts. Then they played the long game. Schools, standardized English, and the American dream before it was even a vibe. They handed the keys back to the same elite families already running the show, but gave them the Hollywood glow-up and an Ivy League education. Spain made us hate ourselves. America made us want to be them. And a century later, we're still in that loop.
I love being an American.
English as the language of the smart, lighter skin as the goal, success only counting if it comes with a foreign stamp, and a Filipino who makes it here, we side-eye. That's why we keep electing the same families that bleed us dry. For half a century, we've been conditioned to think power needs a specific look. Articulate, refined, perfect English. The dynasties just got better at wearing the suit. Final author, us. Black ink, 1946 to right now. We got the pen in 1946, and honestly, we did not write a great first chapter. The same families that worked with Spain, then America, just kept running the place. Independence mostly meant that they stopped answering to a foreign capital. Then, in 1972, Marcos declares martial law, officially to fight communism, but actually because his term was ending and he didn't want to leave. Around 70,000 people were imprisoned, 34,000 tortured, 3,200 killed by the state. Somewhere between $5 and $10 billion were stolen. The press was shut down, the opposition jailed or disappeared. In 1986, millions of us flooded the streets, and 4 days later, Marcos fled to Hawaii in a helicopter. We called it People Power. And it was genuinely beautiful, one of the great moments of the 20th century, and we did that. Nobody handed it to us. Hold on to that because it's true and it's ours. But here's the ugly part that we keep quiet. EDSA changed who was at the top, but it didn't change the system. The Marcoses were never seriously punished. The billions were never recovered. And Imelda, Bongbong, and Aimee were allowed to come back, run for office, and rebuild the whole machine in plain sight, while we congratulated ourselves on our democracy. Fast forward to 2016, we elected Rodrigo Duterte because he sounded like he'd finally cut through the rot. He launched a drug war that killed somewhere between 6,000 and 30,000 people. He rehabilitated the Marcoses. He pivoted us towards China while China rammed our fishermen in our own seas. And in 2022, 36 years after the father fled in disgrace, we elected the dictator's son in a landslide, off the back of a years-long disinformation campaign that recast martial law as the golden age. So that's where we're sitting, The family that looted the country back in the 70s is now back in the palace. A flood scandal swallowing billions. Chinese ships in our waters, and a political class whose signature move is this: they bark, and they rarely bite. They promise 37 arrests, delivers one, deny everything on TV, and play the victim. They gaslight the whole nation in real time, and we let them. And this is the pattern eating its own tail. When the scandal broke, hundreds of thousands of us flooded the streets demanding accountability. But then, months later, an even faster mobilization filled those same streets. 500,000 people, except this crowd wasn't there to demand the accused be punished. They were there to defend one of the accused as the real victim. A machine that can turn out that many bodies to protect one of its own that fast is not a machine that's going to let the system change. Forgive me if this will sound like an insult. I call this place the land of impunity. If you've got money and connections, you can get away with almost anything here. And if you don't, you'll rot in a holding cell for stealing a fucking can of sardines. Okay, I've been talking a lot of shit about us for 10 minutes, so let me be clear about something. I'm not doing this from the outside. I'm one of you. Everything I'm about to name, I've done, or watched my own family do, or caught in myself and hated. So let me show you a few of our patterns and notice that every single one is a dark side of something good. Let's start with crab mentality, where one of us starts to rise and the rest reach up to pull them back down. I lived in this merchant ship. We had a Filipino cook who served European officers steak and fresh fish, and then slid us, the Filipino deckhands, 6 pieces of sad shrimp and broth. He wanted to look like a good worker to the bosses by stifling his own people. That's crab mentality in one bowl. But here's the thing, it's not just a flaw, it's a misdirected feature. That same intensity is the exact same wiring that makes us take care of our own. The loyalty that sends money home to cousins we've never even met. Takes in the whole extended family and refuses to put our parents in a home. Point that loyalty inward and it's called bayanihan. Point it sideways and then it's crab in the bucket. Or even how loud and reactive we are. We are some of the most online people on earth. We'll pile onto a stranger we know nothing about because everyone else is. Because for a second it feels like belonging. I've done it. Hated on some celebrity I knew nothing about just to be part of the wave. That's the echo chamber. That's the gullibility too. We'll believe the first confident-sounding person who walks into the room, the fake news tita group, the influencer who, well, did his own research, and the pastor with a YouTube channel. But that same openness is also the most generous instinct in the country. We're gullible because we're trusting. We're reactive because we feel things hard and fast and out loud. The same wide open heart that gets us scammed is the same one that makes us Filipinos the warmest person in any room. I've seen it everywhere I've ever traveled. And here's one we really don't want to admit. We are, a lot of the time, all bark and no bite. The bark is loud. We do it online. Or ranting about how country is going to hell. But the bite, the actual showing up, voting differently, actually refusing the sacrifice and the 500 pesos for a vote, mostly doesn't come. We rage at corruption and then ask our cousin at the LTO to help us out. We yell at the system and feed it with our own hands. And I get why. We were never once in 500 years allowed to run our own lives. Spain needed us obedient. America needed us admiring. The dynasties needed us distracted. We were never given the chance to build our own backbone. So, of course, we mistake noise for action. The noise is the only part that was ever safe. And the deepest one, the one only a few of us will actually say. We overcompensate with the national pride because when you really look at it, there's not that much we can point to that's purely ours. The food is fusion. The language is half loanwords. The religion came from Spanish ships. And the laws came from American lawyers. Even the crab mentality is a colonial inheritance. 3 centuries of scarcity will do that to a people. Which loops me back to the question I've been chewing on for years. The one I'm only now brave enough to say on camera. Were we even supposed to be one country to begin with? The more I read about who we were before 1521, the languages, the trade routes, the groups that didn't even know each other existed, the more I wonder if the Philippines was just a Spanish filing decision we've spent 500 years trying to make real. We keep hunting for the Filipino identity that got stolen. But what if there was never one to steal? What if we're 7,000 islands of people who got handed each other by a colonizer and we've been awkwardly learning to be a family ever since? That's a sad thought, actually. Last season, in the fanaticism episode, I said that the most dangerous belief is the one you never let yourself question. This is one of those. The belief that we're a single people who lost our way and need to go back. I don't think that's a story. I think we're something weirder and more interesting than that. Because for everything broken about us, the warmth is real. The decency is real. And when it matters most, we've actually shown what we can do. Look at what happens here every typhoon season. The government's disaster response stalls. The same government whose stolen flood money is the reason the water is so high in the first place. And into that gap steps the largest volunteer network in the country. Regular people. The morning after Typhoon Christine drowned Naga, volunteers were already wading through chest-deep flood water, hauling the first relief in, because turning back wasn't an option. During the November 2025 storms, the same season as the flood scandal, that network reached 16 provinces. Not the government, us. And if that sounds familiar, it should. Last season, we did a whole episode on anarchy. How mutual aid isn't chaos, it's what people build when the authority above them fails. That's not theory here anymore. That's just Tuesday. When the system collapses, Filipinos quietly build a better one out of nothing but each other. We've been doing the thing political philosophers write books about for generations, and we just call it bayanihan. That's a proof. Whatever's wrong with us, the capacity to fix it is already there. We show it in every single storm. Is there hope? We have everything we need. We always did. 3 writers wrote on us. Red ink, blue ink, and black ink. It's just us now. We are a people in the middle of writing ourselves. We already know we can build a better thing. We do it every storm and the floodwater for free. The work now is doing it on a day that isn't an emergency. Finally, on purpose. That's Devil's Midnight Thesis. Take responsibly. Or better yet, take responsibility.